everyone, I hope you're all having a lovely day. In this video, I will show you how to create two simple watercolor backgrounds. First up, you will need some watercolor paints. You could use anything that you have. I use the Koi watercolor from P&A. It works wonderfully. There are lots of different colors and they just work well, and it's not that expensive. You will also need some watercolor paper. After a lot of experiments, I have found that the Fabriano brand works best for me. It is white, it blends beautifully, but you could use anything that you have. So I'm starting by wetting my paper with some clear water and then applying the watercolor onto the paper. So I'm taking water, putting it onto the watercolor, taking the brush and then pressing it gently onto the paper. I like the natural flowy look of the watercolor, but you could use any style that you like. The more water you use, the more the watercolor flows on the paper, and the less you use, the more controlled it looks. So if you want to color an image with some watercolor or paint it, you could use less water, and if you want to make a background, more water works well. So I'm just using pink and purple, and I'm coming in with some blue just to differentiate some of the colors. Next up, I'm using some of the Giotto metallic watercolor. This is not that expensive, and the thing about less expensive watercolors is it works just as well. You just have to put enough water onto your brush and mush the paint a bit so that it can pick up all of the pigment. I'm taking some of the bluish silver and just, not everywhere, just here and there, just touching my brush onto the paper. It gives it a little something extra and makes it look nice and special. But once again, you can use anything that you have. Next up, I'm drying my background with a heat tool. You could get this at any crafting store or C&A or P&A. You could also use a hairdryer, that works fantastic, or you could just let it air dry. I just find that drying it with a heat tool or a hairdryer makes it dry quicker, and you can continue with your card. There is our dried background. Now I'm taking some clear water, mixing it with some pink paint and making that really watery. You will see that I'm going to splash that onto the paper. So I'm keeping my brush in the air, it's not touching the paper, and then I'm just flicking it with my finger. And then it makes nice little dots onto your dried background. It just gives it that little something extra. You can do it with any color that you like. Then I'm coming in with some purple. It's just repeating some of the colors and just adding a bit more detail to your big watercolor background. So for this card, we used the smaller brush on the right, and for the next card, we're going to use the bigger brush on the left. So I'm just, again, applying some water with some blue watercolor onto my background, and immediately you can see that it's a bit less controlled. It's a bit more flowy and it covers more of the paper. It's a personal style preference. I like using both kinds of brushes and both kinds of techniques. It gives you different looks for different kind of cards. Just applying different shades, darker blue, lighter blue. You can use it with any color and just spreading it nice and even. Once again, I'm taking some of the metallic blue and I'm just putting it here and there onto my paper. Then I'm also going to splash some of the metallic paint onto the background. Now, remember last time we dried the background before we splashed some paint on top, but this time I'm doing it onto the wet background. That way the dots don't really show up on that big blue part in the middle. It only shows on the side. So it's just a style, your preference. Now I'm also taking a baby wipe and just removing some of the excess paint and water. Now I'm taking some clear water and I am splashing it onto the dried background. Now immediately you can see that there are these little white dots. So the clear water almost removes the paint or some of the pigment from the paper. Again, I'm taking a baby wipe and removing some of the excess water. Ta-da! There are our two finished watercolor backgrounds. Now once again, I just want to show you the blue one I did with a bigger brush and the pink one with a smaller brush. Now I'm going to turn these into cards. I'm trimming the backgrounds with my little gelatine just so that it will fit onto my cards. Off screen, I went and cut out a circle from that pink background that we created, and I'm adding a little paper gift box on to it. This is a great way to use some of your scraps. Create tags that you can add onto gift bags, because many times you have cut-offs from cards and you don't really want to throw it away, but it's not enough to create a whole new card. This is something new that I'm trying, and I hope that people will like it. You can just write a short message like happy birthday or thank you on the back of the tag. Next up, I'm going to finish the blue card. I'm going to stamp a bold sentiment onto the background with some black ink. This one says today's your day. So if you have bold sentiments and you don't really know when to use it because it covers a large surface of your background, watercolor backgrounds are a great way to use those as well because it creates a nice focal point. To finish the pink card, I'm stamping a typewriter with some black ink on white cardstock. So the pink card, that is the remains, I want to say, of that piece that we cut out the circle from. There you can see it. I am colouring the typewriter with some Copic markers, but you can colour with anything that you have at home. After I've finished colouring the typewriter, I'm cutting it out with a bit of a white offset around the edge. So I'm not cutting directly onto the edge of the typewriter, just like a millimeter or so from it. I am putting some double-sided tape on the back of my blue background, and then I will paste it onto a top folding white note card. Doing exactly the same with the pink background, I applied some double-sided adhesive on the back, removing the release paper, and then I'm going to paste it on a white note card. I'm also adding some double-sided tape onto the back of the typewriter, and then I'm going to use some craft foam on the back of that little image. So craft foam, it is really inexpensive. You can get it at any crafting or stationery store, and it just gives your card a little dimension. So the typewriter is not going to be on the same, I want to say, level as the background. It's going to stand out a bit. It just adds a little bit of interest. Finally, I'm adding some Nuvo jewel drops onto the cards, some pink ones on the pink card and blue ones on the blue card. You could add sequins or little pearls or whatever you prefer. This just finishes the card and makes it look more professional. There are our 3 watercolor products. For the tag, I just added a hole on the top and put some string through it. And there are our cards. Thank you so much for watching.